What do you do when it comes to storytelling?
I don't know about you, but I'm one of those people who is, I don't know, I think I was born a
I'm
storyteller.
definitely a catty
So,
Cathy, that's for sure.
and yeah. So, I also have been a trainer. I like to write, and, there's always something to talk about. So, how about you? Are you
You know,
a
I
storyteller
feel like I could
too?
work on my storytelling into the good stories. I found myself telling a lot of negative stories for a really long time, so now it's trying to find my own powerful voice instead of my victim voice in my storytelling.
Okay, that's good. That's good. Well, I have to say that um, I like to travel a lot. So when I go abroad, I always need assistance, medical assistance. So that's one of the few times that I'm actually still in a wheelchair. And at that moment, I start talking to people because they always want to know what's going on. And well, I'm pretty well. It's not so much colorful or pretty in your face, but like my braces, one is with stars and stripes, and the other brace that has pin-ups of me on it. And when you used to see my crutches, they were pinned, so they had these zebra stripes on there. So of course people would always ask like, "Hey, what's this all about?" So that's how we got to talk, and then I would tell them about how it came about and the reactions of the people. So like for instance those zebra crutches, because they look like zebras. I remember one time that I walked onto a terrace with those things and someone sitting down and I was hopping past by. And he said, "Oh, there's a zebra here on the loose," and it was so much fun. And those little things, I like to share that with people because they're actually funny memories. And, so even when sharing difficult stories, it always sort of ends up in a fun story. So, yeah, I guess
Yeah, I think
that's
that's
the whole
also
thing.
true. I think it's important to remember that all of our stories do come to create who we are, right? So even though I've had a lot of negative stories in my past, it still has created who I am now. And so I know that I've been able to inspire self-love personally because of all the stories that I did go through in my mind. And now I just am finding ways to empower my mind and empower myself in my stories to really know I'm an overcomer and I can make it through no matter what life's going to bring at me because life's just always happening, you know?
Yeah, that's true. And Paivi is saying I'm not good with telling stories, and like you said, you may start out telling negative stories, but at some point you realize like, hey, I can remain in all the negativity, or you can just put a smile on it, a smile to it,
Yeah.
and make it into a twist, and then it's all of a sudden just because there's staying in negativity
And you're
that
right.
hasn't helped anyone. But and when you manage to give it a twist, then people actually like to hear your story because you've told the drama, and then from the drama it's like, oh my God, what's going to happen? And then you go like, oh, but nowadays. So like for instance, when I'm saying to people like, oh my God, when are they going to stitch me back together so I can walk normally instead of feeling like I'm a doll, of some sort? And then the next moment I would say, but having said that, I'm so grateful to be able to stand on 2 feet.
Exactly.
I just walk around and being able to actually carry grocery bags. So,
I agree with
those kind
you.
of things.
I
That
think that is important, especially when, we are going through difficult things like you were mentioning the health stuff, right? I think sometimes I also am a caregiver. I've been a CNA most of my life, and I worked as one for 12 years. I also helped my mom through recovery through her transplant and, like being her personal CNA. And most recently, she's actually in her own healing again. She's had another incisional hernia repair because they don't tell you when you have a transplant you're more likely to get incisional hernias like all the time, especially if you're like a curvy lady. And so she's been going through that herself where like just because her body doesn't feel like well because she had open surgery, like they cut her open, and sometimes when our bodies don't feel well, our minds are also a little bit more weak in a sense, because your body and your mind are tied together. So when we're not paying attention to the fact that, we need to take care of ourselves, we need to rest, and we need to take it easy. If we allow ourselves to be like, oh, I can't do anything because I'm wounded right now, well then, yeah, that's a very limiting story. That's a disempowering story, versus telling yourself, right now I have to take it easy because I am healing. I went through this really difficult thing that my body, whether it's mentally, physical, mental or physical, like, we're going through hard things, and that's okay. Like, we have to take that time to heal and to allow ourselves to rest. And that means giving ourselves a break. Like, I know for me, mine were a lot of mental stories that were difficult. And so I needed to give my mind a break from all that negative thought and all the negativity. But when your body is down too, it's it's like extra hard, right?
Sure, that's so true. And then you need all the energy you can get in order to lift yourself up again. So for those who don't know, and I'm included, what
CNA is a
CNA?
certified nursing assistant. So they also call them patient care techs. So anyone that just helps with, registered nurses take care of patients. So like a lot of vital signs, adult daily like activities for daily living. So like you help people brush their teeth and things like that. And that's kind of
Yeah,
all the basic stuff.
yeah,
CNAs really do like the hard work. If you're ever in the hospital.
yeah. I'm just going to show you around for a sec. Then you know what's going on around me. So they're actually trying to figure out what I still want. So someone is still coming up there.
No
I'm going to
worries.
listen. And at the same time, they're like, yeah, we're going to turn on the blender, so that's going to
That's
make
funny.
noise.
That's right.
So, but that's, yeah, I think that's, being a caregiver, it takes some sort of person to be able to do so. So, and especially when you study for it. Well, actually, I'm a therapist and a coach and a counselor, and so I do know about those things too. But yeah, it takes some kind of special person, and I do believe that all of us have stories to share because
Oh
we've
yeah,
seen so many things,
definitely.
and also, and some are probably very emotional, and some of them are probably, sometimes really special things happen, even in the most difficult situations. But then sometimes the outcome of just that one moment, that split second that you're like, oh my God, do you remember those things? And I think that's, if we can get across those special stories, even when they are about people who need care, that we can give a different spin on things.
True.
So,
Yeah. Well, and I think that kind of, I think there's always a spin to something, right? Whether if it's good, it can always be better. And if it's bad, there's always a way to find a little good in it. I know even though my
yeah,
stories of my past seem really daunting and really difficult, I think of like, if I hadn't gone through those experiences, even though in those moments seemed so hard, I wouldn't be who I am today. And like that part is the most important aspect of like, I could have allowed myself to stay stuck, or I could have allowed myself to do what I did do and empower myself and move forward and to change the story so that I'm not a victim, right? And that I can be the overcomer. Because I think there's a lot of different areas in our lives that are like that. And for me, when I took that to heart and I really started focusing on my Inspire Self-Love journey, that's when I was able to realize like those different challenges in our lives create who we are. And without those experiences, I wouldn't be who I am today, and I think the same is for everybody, whether it's a good experience or a bad experience, but it's up to us to try to find a way to reframe the bad into good so that we can live joyful, passionate, and authentic lives instead of being stuck in what I like to call as hell.
that's funny. Okay, so if we take one of the stories where you got out way stronger and we connect that to you, Inspire Self-Love, can you give us one of those stories which shares a little bit about you and how you got to call yourself Inspire Self-Love, and at the same time also shows that one thing where you came out stronger. What
Oh,
would it
there's so
be?
many stories. Let's see, I kind of shared one about my relationship yesterday, so I feel like I want to share something different. So for me, I grew up as an only child, and I didn't grow up as an only child by choice. And my parents actually had a stillborn before me and then a miscarriage after me, so I was kind of like the miracle child. But I didn't feel so miracle child. I felt like as early as second grade, I don't know where I got this idea of like, how come I'm the one that lived, and how come like my brother didn't live, or how come my, whatever after me, why was I the one that lived? So I had this really twisted idea of like, I should have been not the one to live, and why am I here? Like, I don't feel like I belong here. I don't feel like, I feel so alone in this world. And that really carried through my life for a really long time. I actually feel like because of my inspired self-love journey, I've been able to pinpoint that was such an important part of my life, because I did ask for help. I had asked my parents for help at the time, saying like, I have these weird, that looks delicious. Um, I had these like experiences of like depression as a young child, and I would tell them like, I feel like I need help. I need to talk to somebody about this. But it was back in like the 90s when that like mental health wasn't really important to people yet. My dad, bless his soul, I know he meant well. Like, I wanted to be a doctor once, and so he would tell me like, oh, well, we can't put her in therapy because what if that's on her record, and then no one's going to be able to help, she won't be able to become a doctor because it's going to show on her record. It's like, okay, it's called HIPAA. People don't share that kind of stuff publicly, but whatever. Now I know that, right? But at the same time, when I was younger, I went without getting the help that I needed. And so that followed me throughout most of my life. And honestly, I feel like just this last November, I mean, now I'm 32, so like from when you're second grade, I don't even know how old you are in second grade, but you are young, like still in like not even your double digits, right? I was having these ideas of like, why am I the one that's alive? And that loneliness and that like aloneness is really what stemmed a lot of my like problems growing up, my self-hatred, because I didn't feel like I was worthy to be here. And so last year I actually realized that I had built up all these resentments towards God, towards my brother that died, towards myself, and that I had this like heart aching feeling of like, I'm alone in this world. I was born to be alone, and that's what it's going to be like. But it's like, no, that's not true. The truth is that I have so much love to give now that I've focused on my inspired self-love journey, that I've been wanting to give love, but I was giving love in all of the wrong places. I found myself in all these toxic friendships, toxic marriage, where I just wasn't valued. And I wasn't valued because I wasn't valuing myself first, And so when I finally took that time to really narrow it down and to focus, I was able to come to that catharsis realization that I was holding this anger and this frustration towards my brother, towards myself, and towards God because of giving me this aloneness. But the truth is like now I feel like I had to go through all those experiences of suffering alone so that I could be here and tell other people that they're not alone. I'm like, my story I feel like is really unique. Like, it's different because like who at second grade thinks like, oh, I shouldn't have been the one born, like my older brother that died should have been here, so that's really weird. But like now I get to help people and tell them like, even if you feel alone, you're never alone. You're just by yourself, and like you don't have to suffer alone, and you have to reach out. And like I'm here to help inspire that self-love journey for anybody that needs to. And I continue to do it every day, like I get trapped in my negative cycles easily. And that's why for me, it's a way of life. I have to work on it every day because otherwise I fall back to the darkness. And, the evil in the world, it has no new stories. The lies and deception and that dark, it is surrounded by us, whether we're looking for it or not. I mean, just turn on the news and there it is.
And do we do with it? That's the whole thing. So a lot of things came to mind when you were talking. And one of those things were like, when you were were talking about being alone, I was like, yeah, I remember that. I felt like that too. But I do believe that because I felt alone, that I became a daydreamer. And, that step from daydreaming to becoming a storyteller, that's not that big. It's just, I mean, it's basically when you're daydreaming, you're telling yourself stories. You're living in a dream world, which may be parallel to the actual world, but just to survive a little bit better and feel a little bit stronger. So, would you say you
I think
recognize
so.
that?
I think that it does take strength to switch those stories, right? And to realize that, you know, we don't have to play the story that we're stuck on. Because, like I said, most of those times those are lies to us anyway. Like the aloneness, sure, I'm physically alone. I mean, right now I'm like out here, I'm physically alone right here, I know, in my backyard. But I'm not alone. I'm here with you. We're here with the beautiful people watching us
Yeah.
live and the people that will be watching us on the replay. And it takes your own inner work and strength to realize that when people or things make us see only the dark, that's the darkness that's really winning, in my opinion. And so you gotta be the storyteller of your story and not be told the story that, it's the MO of the evil in the world, is to make you feel alone and make you feel disempowered. So,
I, I I believe that I think I was still in elementary school, so I got bullied from very early on. And as far as I can remember, I was like 3 or 4 years old when they already started bullying me. Yeah, okay, same story. And in my case, it was because I'm here in the Netherlands, everyone is blonde with blue eyes. Well, nowadays, that's not the case anymore, but back then it was. So it was very strange to see someone who had black hair and dark brown eyes and a skin which was,
thank
you
you.
know, so they were like, yeah, that was weird. So, and I didn't really know how to behave. So like you felt like, and I want to talk to you about that in a bit, that if you
Mm.
experienced as survivor's guilt. I had an older brother and I had an older sister. I was the youngest one, and I didn't feel part of the family. But I think, as far as I can remember, from 7, 8 years old, it was like I literally stepped into another world when I was at school, or when I was at home, and that was a world where people cared for me, where I felt loved. So I didn't really feel alone because I could always, as just go there. And even now, when I'm experiencing difficult times, I'll just, it's like being in this world, but at
Mm.
the same time, it's like it's there in the back of my mind, which makes life a lot nicer. And of course, now I can use my ratio, so I know like I'm not alone. I mean, I just sent you a
Yeah.
picture when I was sitting outside, and I was with 1, 2, 3, 4 other people, so I had to go inside in order to be able to talk to you. So, and that's kind of funny because you're alone, and I had to make myself be alone,
Right. Yeah,
which
and
didn't
I have
seem.
family inside too. I'm not. I have my daughter now, and
Yeah, yeah,
I live with my mom. I rent her basement because it's tough times right now, and she's willing to let me rent her basement for like a way affordable rate. Like I'm going to take advantage of that because it helps her with the mortgage. It helps me financially, and like I have a daughter now. Like community is so important, and I think that like kind of along the lines of what you were talking about, how sometimes we are surrounded by people. Like I know growing up, my parents were always there. They always loved me and they supported me and they cared for me, and I knew that. And so I don't know why I still felt alone for a lot of my life, at least when it came to like friendships and like people my age relationship wise. But I've been on both sides, right? Where I've been in a crowded room feeling alone, like how Rose and Titanic's like, I feel like I'm in a room and I'm screaming my head off and no one hears me. I felt that way, and I've also felt like I need to retreat and be alone so I can take my own mental space and clarity. I do that a lot more now. Now I actually seek alone time versus when I was younger, I tried to escape it as much as I could.
yeah. Well, when you feel like you cannot connect to other people, you can be in an immense big group, and actually it can get way more harder to connect to them as opposed to talking one on one with someone. So it doesn't surprise me that you're actually saying it because yeah, I know what it's like to okay, there are a lot of people, they are talking to one another, they are talking to one another. What do I do? Do I interrupt them? Well, and that's a very when you're not used to connecting with people and when it feels rude to interrupt them, then yeah, of course it can feel very lonely when you're in a group. And quite honestly, I still duck those moments when people invite me to birthdays with lots of people. I'm like, oh no, hang on, and they always remember me because I'm the storyteller. And then I'm like, oh my God, you told me things too, but what again did you tell me? Those kind of things. And, I had loving parents too, and they helped me, especially my mom helped me really because we were being bullied. But because my brother connected to my dad and my sister connected to my mom, it was like I felt a little left out. But what you are saying, when I listen to your story, it's like, and that's why I wanted to talk about survival's guilt for a sec, is a lot of people, they wonder, why am I still alive and the other one isn't anymore? And when no one explains that to you and you just keep going on in your mind, why me? That can just start to live a life of its own in your mind. So do you recognize something
Yeah,
in that
I think so.
process?
And I don't really talk about it. I guess survivor's guilt, that's a good way of talking about it. And I think that I never actually talked about it publicly, at least. I don't think I have. I've kind of touched
Well,
base a little bit on
congratulations.
it. So this is going to be a challenging little section here for me. But, for me, I don't know where that idea came from more than now that I've done my healing is that it was that darkness calling. The darkness that wanted to drown my light, that wanted me to not feel worthy or capable of living the life that I was created to live for. Because at the end of the day, we
Yeah.
all experience our own journey, and for some reason, who knows that reason, my brother wasn't meant to be here. And the life beyond mine wasn't meant to be here, like the younger sibling that I could have potentially had. And there could have been so many reasons, right? Of like maybe they weren't healthy. Maybe maybe that was their purpose, was to instill this sorrow in my family so that they would be more prepared for me when I came along. I mean, they thought I was going to come out sick too, but thankfully I'm normal. But like that was a challenging time. Like my mom told me, they asked her like, well, we don't know for sure, but your child might have like cerebral palsy or like some other big thing. Like, do you want to terminate? And my mom was like, oh my gosh, how can I consider terminating when I just went through a loss not a few years ago? Like, this is such a blessing. And like, they gave her that choice. And I think like, what if I got terminated? I wouldn't be here. And I'm like, I mean, I had my mental struggles, but I'm pretty much okay. But the feelings of that stuff, what took so long for me to recognize, and it did frame who I became, like it was a big part of myself. That aloneness is I allowed other people to mistreat me, to disrespect me, to emotionally kind of abuse me, because to me, I would have rather be alone I would have rather not be alone, than to like say, you know what, I don't like the way you're talking to me, and so I'm not going to be friends with you anymore. Or to allow people that constantly like threw my friendship away, like, you know what, I don't like the way you think and I don't agree with you, so we're not going to be friends anymore. And it's like, oh, okay, I used to like come crawling back, and now because I don't feel that way, like now I value who I am, and I value my alone time too, that it's not that way for me anymore. But the survival part, it just is so deeply rooted that even though I never recognized that all these things came from that aloneness that I felt, from that guilt and that lack of self-worth, it framed all of my life. And it's different for every person, and every person has to do their own work, but I do strongly believe that just the mere fact that any of us are here is like such a miracle, because like you have to have the same mom and the same dad get together, and then like the chances of like that one little sperm and the one little egg meeting together and making you into a human being, like that's a lot of work. And people think it's not, because there's so many people out there, but that's the darkness that's trying to say you're not unique, when really every single one of us are. Because could you imagine, like, even if one grandparent or one extra distant uncle didn't get together with someone to create your, grandparent, we wouldn't be here. Like, it's like a really big oddball chance.
I'm sorry. Someone called me. I'm going to, she probably will do it again. So if you lose me for a sec again, then you know what just happened. But to get into the whole thing, one of the reasons I don't have kids is exactly what you just said. Sometimes it just doesn't happen. And quite honestly, I do believe it's for the better, and I'm a proud auntie, and I'm taking care of other, I would say young people, so they're basically your age and 20s and early 30s who get stuck in life. But the whole thing about loneliness, and I'm so happy you got to talk about this and point this out, is a lot of people, they will do anything and everything just to be part of it and to be there. And like you said, they actually, they everything they go against in life and their beliefs, they might just put it aside just to be a part of. I never did that. I was a loner, and was maybe because I was a daydreamer, and I'm always been very stubborn. But I do help a lot of people out there nowadays who are dealing with numbing themselves because they constantly cross their boundaries. So, having said so, I realized that I did a group training this week, and I told them about constantly crossing my boundaries, not because I wanted to fit in, but because I was an employer working for a company, and I was like, yeah, I need to work hard. That's what I learned when I'm growing up. I need to work hard. I need to be worthy of, earning money. They need to be happy with me, with the work I do. And oh my God, you don't want to know how many boundaries I've crossed just to please the employer. Um, and that's the whole thing. So at some point I decided I'm no longer going to be an employee anymore, because it starts out fun, and I've got to get all the freedom, and then management changes, and then and then at some point I get stuck because they want to control me, and of course I want to do what's best for the people I'm actually working for. So I don't mean the employer, but the clients from the company. And I couldn't do that anymore. So at some point I was like, bye. And, but a lot of people I've noticed, when really young people, we can see them, they start cutting themselves. When people are older, also, by the way, teenagers, yeah, exactly. They start drinking, they start smoking weed, all those things which.
Yep, that was me. Yep, that was me.
And yeah, so nowadays I help the ones, because what it comes down to is they don't feel heard, seen, and understood. You get it? I get it too. And so I've been in luck. I don't drink alcohol. I've never smoked one day in my life, not one cigarette ever. So that makes a whole bunch of difference. But I do see what it does to people. And even though I didn't cut myself, when I grew up, I would bite myself. I would slam with my fist at the table. When I would play the piano, it didn't work. I would just hit the woodwork, and I'd scratch myself. And I didn't know that until someone actually pointed it out to me. And then I was like, oh my God, that's basically, and when someone started talking about self-mutilation, I was like, oh, yeah, I remember that. And of course, nowadays, I understand it's because we want to flip the switch. We don't want to feel for a sec, so we hurt ourselves in order to numb the mental pain, basically. By the way, which is also a trick to cut out physical pain. So if you experience a lot of physical pain somewhere or a lot of itching, then you just, you know, if you just go here or there and you do something, then it interrupts the nerve system. You can just cut out. It's a little nice trick, actually, to do. But, you know, people should know at some point, like, what are they doing? Are they harming themselves and hurting themselves in the long run? And if they don't do it, what happens? Because I've noticed that people, if they keep it inside and they don't talk about it, then at some point they explode. And oh my God, what's going to happen once they explode? So that's what I do. I basically give people voice. I help them share their story because I know what it's like not to be seen, heard, and understood. So
Yeah.
and so
Yeah, I think that is, you touched on so much, because I mean, the self-harming thing, I think is, you know, a lot of people want to say it's only self-mutilation, but when you label it as a self-harm, like there's a lot of things that are self-harming, including self-sabotaging and like making bad choices. Like I definitely made a lot of bad choices in the regards of running away from the pain and not sitting with it and dealing with it for so many years. I also self-harmed as a teenager, where I did slice my skin, unfortunately. And it's so interesting because it's just a coping mechanism to not feel the inside pain. Yeah. And I actually found myself a few years ago, the last time I self-harmed, I was 19, so I left that in my teenage years. I strived really hard to let it go. But it's so interesting because even now, okay, well, I guess not now, but like 2 years ago, when I was in like the pit of my despair, like I was not inspired self-love at all. I was in this toxic relationship, toxic marriage, and I wanted to do it. All of a sudden, it was like, oh my gosh, life is so miserable. You know what would help is feeling it on my skin instead of feeling it in my soul. And I literally had to think about it like, wow, it's been 10 years since I have done this to myself, and now I'm stressed out, and now I have this, like, it's just like yelling at me, like, you should do that, and then I'm over here, like, the other side's like, don't do it, it's not going to help, it's going to make everything worse, then you're going to spiral even harder. And so, like, I actually told my doctor this because I was pregnant at the time. And so at this point, now my body was no longer just me. Like, now my body actually was growing life. And this is my first pregnancy. I'd never experienced something like that. But I'd also never experienced a healthy relationship when it comes to marriage either. And so I told my doctor I had these feelings, and that, you know, I ended up journaling about it. But I also ended up taking a red Sharpie and just marking my skin. And the healing of it, of like knowing like this old coping mechanism used to help me, and now I'm able to express the need for that to myself without doing the actual self-harming. And it really was like a reflective moment of like, those are old tools, but now I have new ones. I had to grow new ones and make the conscious choice not to fall back into the old ways. And it was amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, I do believe that a lot of people, so these two stars here.
She's over here.
Those two stars, they actually got tattooed on there because it was either I'm going to do something to myself or I get those tattoos on there. And actually, these ones, those were the next ones which followed. And I've got a couple of here, which are also a reflection of something bad that happened. Then again, these, there. These are actually very positive ones because they mark the new beginning of my life. But I do believe that a lot of people, and by the way, this one was, yeah, exactly. And this one I see as the door can be opened to many places. By the way, this was a coincidental one because it was about a Valentine's tattoo in the key. But I do believe a lot of people, they have the piercings like you and I have, and the tattoos too, in order to just, deal with something. But it's also a little bit addictive because on one end it's good, mutilate yourself, but on the other hand, it helps you cope with
True.
something.
That's very true. For me, I actually, I have a couple stars too. Say hi. Hello. To my little person. You need a jacket
Hi
to be out
there.
here, Missy. It's kind of chilly. Um, I also have a couple stars, but mine are not tattooed stars. They're cut stars. And I got this other tattoo. I didn't really get a chance to show it to you too well, but I got this tattoo last year when I was 30, or 2 years ago now. And you probably can't tell, but it runs along a scar here. Um, and it was kind of like
Mm-hmm.
this tattoo has one of those little semicolon hearts. I don't know if you can see it. It's kind of a bad angle. My semicolon.
Yeah, I see it.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. You want to go inside? Oh, you see some birds. And so, sorry, mom life here. And so it was like I got it with the idea of, like I am a warrior in my life. And now looking back, it's like now part of my movement is saying we are women warriors. I think we're all warriors, but I kind of focus on the women right now in my life, in my journey. And so the journey of allowing those dark moments, those battles to really create who we are and let us be the challengers, to let us be the warriors of our lives, knowing that we can overcome the battles. And, it might seem silly that story of like using a red Sharpie to like feel like I was going through that old coping mechanism. That was a battle that I had to overcome. And the tattoos, I actually have another tattoo that I got last year when I was at the end of my divorce. I was like the day or two before we mediated, I ended up getting this tattoo. And somebody else I was there with, she suffered through self-harming as well. And she was like, when I get a tattoo, it kind of feels the same. And I was like, oh, I never thought of that, but it kind of does, like that pain on the skin.
Yeah,
But it's like instead of it being a negative pain, it's a beautiful pain because you're trying to create something beautiful out of the pains that we're going through. And that tattoo I can't show you very well right now either, but it's on my ankle, and it's an ankle, and it's an anchor with like kind of like a almost like an infinity symbol, and it says refuse to sink.
Mm-hmm.
So these different parts of us do create who we are, and we get to make the story for who we are.
So I know that you still have a lot of things to do, but if you are okay with it, I would love to do a follow-up series with you when it comes to the whole self-harming, self-love, and how we can get out of the negative self-talk through sharing stories, but not only to other ones, but also to ourselves, so that we can get rid of those negative self-beliefs and those negative mindsets and change them into positive ones. Because I know you've got your share, I've got my share, and I think we could do an amazing amount of series about that. So I don't know, on my YouTube channel, Lady Lexy Speaks Up, people can actually see it. So if you're watching this, then go to the next video. But you probably have something along those lines too. So do you have something on video, on YouTube, on Instagram?
Yeah, so I actually, in my bio on my link, so if you do the little arrow above, there's like a drop down, and you please follow me and we'll get together again. But I actually have a course. I've created a digital course on breaking negative cycles. And there's going to be more building on that. I would love to do a series with you. I'm so open. I'm still pretty new in my journey of trying to understand how to like talk about everything, and I find myself able to talk with other people a lot easier, as Evan says. So I am so down to do some more collaborations together, maybe a series, because I think it's so important for people to realize that they aren't alone in these different journeys. Those darknesses, even though they are individually unique to each one of us, so many of us have a story like that. And there's no reason that any of us have to suffer alone, because the world is full of suffering, whether it's good or bad. So,
yeah, I love that. So let's go do it. So for those who are in favor, just leave a comment. And for those who want to see more, check out our YouTube channels or Instagram. Follow the links in both our descriptions. And we are going to see you
sounds great.
soon again.
Bye.
So,
If you want to see more videos about storytelling, then click on that video and you will see the next video related to storytelling.